This video is to show how to create a pivot table on raw data, in this case age. There are 40 values. This data came from the National Center for Health Statistics. My name is Joe Snyder, and I'll be narrating this particular video on using Excel to create a summary table based on those raw data values. So let's dig right in. We're going to take the age column. There are 40 values. We're going to highlight those, copy, and place them, copy and paste over into its own sheet. It's a little easier to deal with, a little easier to see if this data is by itself on its own sheet. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of the data for age, go up to Insert, pick Pivot Table over on the far left. There's a pop-up that comes up. It has automatically the highlighted range that I've picked. What I want to do though is choose Existing Worksheet, and I'm going to use this button on the end to choose what cell to put it in, the pivot table, just somewhere out in the open. Then I click that little button on the end again. It comes right back. I hit OK. So what we've done is we've got a range for what's it going to use to create the summary table, and then we're going to place the pivot table summary table over here in cell E3. Now you're seeing the PivotTable Designer, and what you're seeing is you have rows, you have columns, and then you have the matrix of values in the actual table. We have the column names over here on the right, and then you get these four boxes down here at the bottom right of the designer. The rows and the values are what we're going to use here for this summary table. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on age and drag and drop it down to rows. I'm also going to drag and drop it down to values. We're getting the sum of age, which is what we do not want. So I'm going to hit this little drop down, pick value field settings, and select count. That's really what we want, is a count of ages. Okay. So as you can see, it's starting to build this pivot table over here on the left. Now a summary table, what we're trying to do is to get age groupings and let the pivot table count how many are in each grouping. The way you do that in Excel is to go ahead and right click any value within the age area, and what you're going to see is you have group and ungroup. We need the grouping feature. And as you can see here, it's trying to come up with some numbers. I usually pick a little bit lower than the starting point and a little bit higher than the ending point. So in this case, I'm going to pick 15 and 65. By 10 is probably good since we have 40 values, so it'll distribute out the way we want. So I'm going to hit OK. You notice that the pivot table feature went from 15 to 24, counted up 13 of them, 25 through 34, counted up 5 of them, and so on, all the way up to 55 to 65 with 8. The grand total being 40. That's a good way to desk check because we have 40 values and we should have a grand total of 40 in the count. Okay, when you click off of the pivot table, that designer area over here on the right goes away. If you click on the pivot table again, it comes back if you ever want to modify it. One very quick thing I wanted to show you now that we have a summary table is that we can produce a chart from it. If I highlight just the rows in here that have the age breakdown and the total, I can then come up here to Insert, pick on the graphic for the column chart, just pick the first one in the list, and you'll notice that I now have a bar chart. One of the common things you do about creating a summary table like this is you want to see if it looks like it's a normal distribution, for instance, or what the shape of the distribution is, the distribution of values. So in this case, you can see that it's very high on the left, and then it goes up and down. If you wanted to, this is called a column chart. If you wanted a histogram, all you do is right click on one of the bars, format the data series, and then this gap width you make 0. When you do that, you now have a histogram. I'm going to click on just an empty cell to get rid of that designer. So this doesn't look like a bell curve to me, and that's one of the typical questions, is what's the shape of this look like, and is it a normal distribution? Is it uniform, which would mean it'd be all level across, but it's really high up toward the front. So this data represents females and their health data, and you can see it's really the 15 to 24 group has 13 members in it, 13 count. So you can see it's very high, loaded on the left. Okay, this ends this video, and I hope to have you look at some of the future videos about how to produce some charts from summary information or raw data. Thank you.